Pete Thamel back here on the show. How are you, Pete?
Rich, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So let's bang this out. I know you said you're on the runway at LaGuardia right now, which I appreciate you calling in from.
Yes, in the spirit of breaking federal law, I may be doing it too.
Well, I mean, look, exactly. So let's get to it. For those who may not have read what you wrote, break it down, nuts and bolts, about what's going on in the world of college hoops.
Sure. So essentially, there's been this wide-sweeping federal probe that resulted in 10 arrests in September that has kind of handcuffed and put the mushroom cloud over the sport. And there were 2 hearings, sort of perfunctory deals in New York yesterday. And I wrote a story that basically said that the information that they have in discovery right now, that the feds collected over years of wiretaps and document collection and bank record collection, et cetera, are explosive enough to indelibly alter the face of college basketball as we know it, the sport as we know it, and that includes Hall of Fame coaches, top prospects, and obviously blue blood programs.
And wow, so what's the timing on this? Best you can tell here.
I mean, that is the magic question. I probably got 200 texts in the last 24 hours from coaches being like, "What's the timing? What's the timing?" Because it affects so much. And here's the thing: it's not like they're just going to have like document release day and it's all going to come out. So I quoted Daniel Richman, a very smart law professor at Columbia, who said like, some's going to come out in pretrial motions. Some may never come out. And essentially, it's probably going to come in dribs and drabs. Some could just come out in trial. When as they're presenting evidence in the courtroom, if one of these 3 cases tied to this ends up going to trial. So the ambiguity of this is one of the most fascinating parts, Rich, because it's a ticking time bomb destined to go off, but no one knows when or how much is going to come out.
And you say they're Hall of Fame coaches that are going to be involved in this sort of thing, expected to be?
Yes, that's correct, Rich.
So if that's the case, then somebody's got to know some names somewhere, correct? That's talking about it but doesn't really want to talk about it, right? I mean, that there's somebody knows.
It's under protective order, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. It's like the dynamics here are really fascinating. There are multiple tensions pushing up against each other.
Mm-hmm. Pete Thamel joining me here from the runway. Are you being pressured to hang up the phone, Pete?
I am not.
Okay,
I am not. Everyone's kind of on their phone now. It's the Delta shuttle from LaGuardia to Boston is a little bit of a, it's a commuter operation. So.
Who is the central figure in this whole thing? What can you tell me about Andy Miller here, an NBA agent who seems to be the focus
Sure.
of this?
So Pat Forty, my Yahoo Sports colleague, and I wrote a very long, in-depth profile of Andy Miller, probably in November or December. And essentially, look, the agent business is pretty much fundamentally corrupt in terms of the recruiting. Not every single guy, but that landscape is viewed as a majority of the guys are making illicit payments to players and their families in order to get clients. That's sort of a fundamentally understood part of that game. And within that space, Pat and I wrote in that profile, Andy Miller was considered one of the most brazen operators, if not the most brazen operator. He's had, multiple lawsuits, but against me, stole Kevin Garnett from an agent named Eric Fleischer, which is how he got to start the business. Sort of, regarded in that space, and we quote people on the record saying it as an unscrupulous operator. So, they went and took his computers, which you can extrapolate and say that they have, the feds did the day this all happened. So, if you extrapolate it out and say that they have access to all of his bank records and all of his information, and he was bankrolling Christian Dawkins, who is the young middleman who we also profiled on Yahoo Sports earlier in this case, who was, everybody said was paying everyone. It's going to touch a lot of players, but it's also going to touch a lot of coaches and programs too. That potential information.
So let's just paint me the most likely scenario here, Pete, that this all comes out, right? Let's say it all comes out. I like how you say it's not going to be like a document day in the same way like it's signing day, right?
Yeah.
So
pick up the FBI hat.
So at some point where this whole thing comes to an end and then it gets dropped in the NCAA's lap to figure out what to do, or you think that this might be a case where it gets so bad the federal government actually steps in and we might have to rethink the way that we have amateur athletics in this country?
Those are great questions, and I don't know the answer to it because I don't know how much of this stuff is going to get released. I do think a lot of it eventually will get out, but I don't know how much. I don't know if the government is going to be compelled to hand over information to the NCAA. I don't know how much would be subject to open records requests because it's public record. So there are a lot of variables here, and this may surprise you, but I went to journalism school and not law school, so a lot of it is out of my very limited intellectual threshold in terms of like the nuances of the legalities of this. But the smart people that I've talked to about this and been sort of quoting throughout this case indicate that it's probably going to come out in drips and drabs. But it's going to be wide sweeping. And I think we're taking off, Rich. So I got to go.
There you go, Pete Thamel. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Pete Thamel, Yahoo Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.